I'll start with a very basic introduction to what Eventotron is. It started with some work that I did for the big venues in Edinburgh, where they basically had to get between 600 and 800 shows, details all in one place and produce a brochure. And we then took that and to Brighton, and rather than just being about a brochure, it was about collecting all the information, keeping it all in one place, and then making sure that it can get out to brochures or websites, other bits and pieces, apps even. Because the problem we found was that a festival might use something like Google Forms just to collect basic information about a show, and then the moment they have to push that to their box office, they have to update in the box office, and they have to update their brochure, they have to update their internal systems, all that sort of stuff. So we found we wanted to be the place where it's all in one place and you know where the accurate information is at all times. We work with all kinds of different festivals. So we started with kind of the Edinburgh or Brighton model of open access. We also have curated festivals. So in an open access festival, anyone can join in. Curated festival, obviously, you want to hear from shows and then you want to decide if you want them. Lottery festivals, which a lot of the Canadian festivals are, where people will apply sometimes without even a show, and then the lottery is drawn as to who gets to take part in the festival. And we've also expanded things like touring schemes. We work with Applause Rural Touring, and I've forgotten the name of the one in Devon, but because they've got a similar model. Obviously, they've got lots of venues, lots of shows, and they need to put them all together. We also, some venues use us just for their year-round activities. I've got one-day events as well. We've even got things like a food festival and a cycling festival in Australia. So the idea is we've got all these people in the system. There's like 60,000 artists registered now. There's about 8,000 venues and hundreds of festival managers. The idea is that they all put the information into Eventotron, and then you, as a festival manager, can use that information to drive all the different bits of your organization. So that could be making a print brochure, could be driving a website, it could be exporting to your box office, although we do now also offer our own box office system. You need to make venue passes or check people on the door, or if you need press to apply for tickets, something like that. We can all handle that. It's all in the same place. So what we're going to cover today is just showing you how to set up a festival and the very basics. So most of these things with the arrows pointing to, we won't look at today, but we'll get to the point where if you want to do that kind of thing, like issue a contract to your artists, you could do. Just one concept I want to go over before we start. Shows in Eventotron in relation to your festival can be in one of three states. The first is the application state. So obviously that's usually where you just get the initial bit of information about a show. Second is registration. That's where you might get more detailed information. So you'd be collecting things like technical requirements or images for brochures and websites and blurbs, more detailed marketing information. And then the final step is what we call finalized, in that the show is signed off. Their ability to edit what they've put in is limited at that point, and you know you're then safe to put in a brochure, put in a website, start selling tickets. So that's just a summary of that. Because of the vast variety of different festivals, not every festival will use every step, but it's useful to be aware of when I start going into more detail, because I'll talk about application, registration, and finalized. So for example, an open access festival probably wouldn't have an application phase, but a curated festival would. And then lots of our Canadian festivals have an application, and then they have registration, and then they don't finalize because they have a much longer lead in, and they tend to release new questionnaires over time as they come close to the festival. So that's application, registration, finalized. Okay. So let's look at how we set up a festival. So everyone comes to eventotron.com. Anyone can set up an account. It's pretty straightforward. New users, just an email address and password, as standard. This is where I wish I could have typed faster. This is what everyone sees when they first come in. Just a bit of help. Down the bottom there's the latest festivals and seasons that are currently taking applications. Toronto and Durham down there. And if you go here, you can see all of them. Everything's live at the moment. Ukraine, we were pleased to be helping with them. That's good. And at the Edinburgh lot are taking registrations at the moment. That was a Canadian one. So to create a new festival, you just go to create a festival or season. Just put in the name of your festival. I think we're calling this one Webinar Fest. All you need is a start date and an end date, and it will ask you to set up a company to go along with it. Give it a second. Anyone can do this. You can start with a free account and start experimenting. You can get your festival almost up and running. So yeah, a festival needs a company behind it, so we're just doing that. Okay, and then create the festival or season. Okay, that's done. So we go on to set up the festival. So this is the festival management kind of dashboard, I guess you'd call it. The tabs along the top will go into most of those today, so it's not totally relevant. Setup is obviously the basics. Info collection is where you set up your forms that you need people to fill in. Events is where you manage events that are part of your festival, so venues. And then money, you can monitor who's paid your application fees and set up rules and things like that. Box office we won't touch on today, but it's all just to show it's all in the same place. And then the add features tab is just, there's lots of things we don't turn on by default. Almost all of these, there's no extra charge for or anything. But things like doing departure boards or press portals, contracting, we can turn those on for you. And just highlighting there that currently we're in trial mode. So I think in trial mode, you can have one venue and a handful of events just to play with before we try and get any money out of you. And also it's set to private. So as long as it's private, you can play around, no one can see externally, people can't apply to you or anything like that. So if we go and have a look at the setup tab. I hope. The setup tab. Okay. So this is just the basics about how your festival works. Various different sections on the top there. It's put in the details that we gave it initially, so the festival start date and end date. You can also have performances before and after your publicized dates. So if you're running previews and you still need to keep track of those in the system, you can do that. Put in information about your festival so people can find out information about you. Just a simple image for the festival. And you will get venues and shows to agree to terms and conditions, so you can just pop those in there if you need to. Next is the description of the festival. So obviously we've got these artists in the system, so they will come and look for performance opportunities, so you can fill out information there about what your festival's like, what it offers, when it is, etc. And then, yeah, we're just putting a bit more, there's just a few opportunities around the system for you to display your own sort of branding, so just loading images and things. And again, the welcome page is what artists see most often, so we're just providing useful information for them. You'll see where these pop up shortly. And again, if you want to customize the colors, you can choose various different places. You know, if your festival is purple and you want to display purple in places, you can. Okay. Look, you'll see where that comes in shortly. Options is where you set up how your festival behaves. Are you going to allow events to apply to you, or are you just going to invite events in, or are you going to make up events yourselves, manage it all internally? When events apply to you, are they automatically approved as they would be in an open access festival, or do you sit on those and make a decision about them later? Same for venues. We'll do a separate webinar on venues, but you can have external venue managers using the system so that they come to you with their venue, much like a show would, you let them in, and then they can start talking to shows that are part of your festival and going, yeah, we'd like to perform with you. Again, if you don't work that way, if you manage your own venues, that's not a problem. And then obviously the system chucks out various emails at different points, so you can fill those in there. Sessions is where you set up the kind of performances you're going to allow to be part of your festival. So in this example that we're setting up, we're going to allow paid shows, pay what you want shows, and free shows. Got various different ticketing options. We're going to put in a child concession. Basically, depending on how you run your festival, if you're going to allow your artists to set their own dates, times, and prices, you can say, okay, we want you to offer a child concession or an OAP concession or just a standard concession. Concessions are a different ticket price. All the Americans call it something different, so I don't know if it's and then just a bit more information people applying to you. I think that's all we need to put in there, really. Okay, and then the API key section is that's for further down the line if you need to get data out to people to drive your website or to send listings to press. Sometimes does that. Okay, so that's that section. Next section is info collection. So this is where you set up the forms that you're going to use to collect information from artists. So if you go to the section, there's already a little video there for a bit of help. That box you see on the left-hand side, that's very similar to what an artist sees when they're registering. I think in a second, I'll show you some existing festivals so you can get an idea of the variety. Like some will have, so this is from the point of view of an artist. They've got a few shows in the system. That particular show seems to be performing at a few festivals. So let's have a look at what they see. So that's information about the show. They appear to be participating in 4 festivals. That application being considered. So that's obviously a curated festival. Brighton Fringe is an open access festival. So you can see these down the left-hand side, these boxes, all the different sections. That's all totally customizable by you. That's another one that they're in application for. And that's obviously a simpler festival than Brighton Fringe. If we just go to Brighton Fringe, I'll show you what the questionnaires look like. So all sorts of different questions. The red ones are required. Well, they bounce around a little bit. Most sections will be questionnaires, but then we have like advertising sections. So if you need to sell advertising, you can do that. That's part of the questionnaire building process. And then there are a couple of special sections, documents, which is where if you've got useful things you need to share with your artists, like that could be assets putting on posters or guides how to use things. The venue finder is a special section. If you allow your artists to find their own venues, the venues are listed here in quite a lot of detail, and they can search for them on different criteria. So this artist is looking for a venue which has a capacity of more than 50 and has a proper stage and dressing room. And then the venues can build quite detailed profiles, tech specs, all the kind of things that they offer to artists. And from here, the artist can start up a conversation with that venue. As I say, though, some festivals will do this all internally and not show it to the artist, so they don't need to build up these venue profiles. They'll just match them up themselves, but if they want to, they can. And then this is the payment section. So we can see there's a £99 registration fee. They're going to be asked to pay it on Finalised. So those are the 3 special sections are documents, venues, and payments. I'm just showing you here. You can go into a show and communicate with it from there if you need to. Just send them an email very easily. Okay, so let's look at how we set that up for our example festival. As I say, that the default template just gives you a blank documents, payments, and venue section, and this basics bit is a very basic form. We're just asking for the main admin contact, country they're from, and the genre of their show. And we also give you an office section, which is hidden from them. And that's where useful stuff like when they applied, or if you need to make internal notes about the show that you don't want them to see, you can stick them in there. So we're going to create a new section. You can start from scratch, or you can bring in a pre-built section. We've got our simple template. There's also the Edinburgh registration questions in there as well, if you want to copy them, basically. So these are sections that we can just import automatically without having to build them ourselves. So let's bring in about my company and about my event and say import sections. There they are, down at the bottom there. About my company and about my event. Those are the questions in there. You can drag and drop the order of them. You can move questions between different sections, all that kind of thing. And you can test what this is going to look like to an artist at any point. As I say, red questions required, other ones aren't. You'll see as you answer questions, your progress creeps up, so the artist knows how much more they've got to fill in. Okay. So if you click into a question, you can see that you can change different type of question, add help text if it's required. So what we're going to do now is we're not going to have a world premiere question, we're going to have a UK premiere question, and we're going to add on what we call a conditional question. So if they say no to UK premiere, we can ask them where else they performed. So I'm going to create a new question. You can import individual questions and put instead of whole sections, but we'll just make our own one here. Where have you performed for? So that's a text question. We're going to make it a larger text question so they can give us more information. You put a word limit on it. We're going to say, if you say no to being a premiere, then you have to tell us where you perform, so make it required. And this is we're going to say, only display this question if the answer to UK premiere is no. And you can see it's conditional because it's italic there. So we'll put that question underneath UK premiere. And then we'll just have a look at it again. So UK premiere, if you answer yes, nothing happens. If you answer no, you get asked for more information. So next thing is we'll build a whole new section. We could have imported the marketing form from our standard template, but we're going to make our own one here. Just rearranging where everything lies. Oh, hang on, before we get to that point. If I want these questionnaires to appear in the application phase, all we do is click them and say they're application forms. So that means that the show will fill that out before they get through to the main bulk of registration. Just showing the different kind of questions that we have in there. Let's put the running time question in the basics, so they see it when they apply, and also the suggested ticket price we'll put in there as well. So those are now part of the application form that they'll fill in before the next step. Okay, so I got ahead of myself before, but what we're going to do now is build a marketing section. So we're not going to import an existing one. We're going to start a new one. And we're going to use this section to collect images and blurbs for our website and for our brochure. When you make a new section, you have lots of options you can choose about it. I showed you before, you can set it's an application form. If you want it to appear first, you can set whether the show can see it. You can set whether the show can edit it, or whether they can edit it until they're finalized. So that basically means the show can edit the form. When they finalize and maybe pay the registration fee, it becomes locked, so they can't edit it anymore. And you're in control of it. And that just means that section contributes to the overall progress bar. You can also put an email address in there, and that means that when the artist finishes just that particular section, someone will get notified. So if you had a marketing form and you need to tell your marketing manager when someone's completed it, you can pop their email address in there. Maybe you have a technical manager who needs to see that kind of thing, or a PR person. And the other thing about that is that means you can lock sections on an individual basis rather than on overall finalizing. And just as you can have conditional questions, you can make whole sections conditional. So I don't know if someone said it's a workshop and you needed to get information about wraparound material, you can have a whole section which only appears if you've answered it particularly that way. Okay, so we're going to add some questions to our marketing form. Website blurb. Again, we'll make it a large text area. Put in some help text. Put in some misspelled help text. We're going to make this box a bit bigger because we're going to ask them for more information. You can set a word count. You can also set a character count if you prefer to do it that way. We're going to say it appears online. That just puts a little badge on the question so that when the artist is answering it, they know that that information is going to be publicly available. And we're going to make this required because we definitely want them to answer it. So next we're going to ask for the image. The nice thing about the image questions is you can set the required spec for the image. So if you know your website needs a certain size image, it will let the artist crop down their image to that size, or it won't let them upload it if it's not big enough. You know, you're always getting the right stuff. So that's what we say. We're going to want, I don't know, probably about 600 high by about 1,000 tall. And tell them it appears online again, and we'll make it required. The next thing, we're going to ask if they want to appear in our print brochure. We can do a lot more with print than we're going to be able to show you today. We're just going to collect the information today. But what we do for a lot of clients is we can take their template of their brochure and make it into something that we can show the artist as they fill in their details. So they can see their listing and they can sign it off as they register. That means that by the time registration is finished, we can then send you a document that's got all those listings in the right order. We can generate an index for you, saves a lot of time. Excuse me. Yeah, you can sell ads that you want to place in the brochure. You can place them yourselves. So hopefully you spend less time with a print designer than you otherwise would, which hopefully saves money. We're asking now for a character count for this field rather than a word count. You can do either. And so that appears in print. What we're going to do later with that question about appearing in the brochure, we're going to hang a payment off that. So if someone says, I want to appear in the brochure, we're going to charge them an extra fee for being in the brochure. And I think the last question we've got in here is a separate image for the print. Assuming it's going to be a different size to what you use online. And then in advanced, we're just going to say, I'm going to display this question if they've said, do you want to appear in the print brochure? Okay, so we can test that. That's our marketing section. Our required questions. It's in the word count for you at the bottom. Choose image. it's constraining it to the size that we want it to be. But we're just saying, I just want to choose that bit of the image. Would you like to appear in our print brochure? Yes, I do. Print blurb. And we'll use the same picture, but we'll crop it differently. So we've got a blurb for the website and an image for the website and a blurb for the brochure and image for the brochure. So obviously you could add as many questionnaires as you want. People use it for things like billeting if they're helping artists find somewhere to stay. Technical questions are very common. We're going to move on to the events tab now. So we've set up some forms. It's looking pretty simple, but so we'll just do a separate webinar on this tab. Excuse me. But this is where you'll spend most of your time once your festival's up and running. It just allows you to report on events, email your artists, see events on a timeline. Like if you want to pick out different bits of information to export to a CSV or a spreadsheet, you can do it there. All I'm going to show you very quickly is you can create, if you're not waiting for us to supply to you and you want to create your own events, or you have to know someone who wants to perform with you, you can create the event yourself. You can assign it to a venue if you want. And if you put their email address in there, then they join that show and they can log in and fill out the information for you if you want them to. So that's the artist view if they're invited in. So for that, so the venues tab, very similar. It's more festivals will manage their venues internally than will be managing the actual shows themselves. If I started this. So more festivals will get involved with this part and creating their own venues. We're just going to create a test venue here so I can show you the process of a show signing up to a venue. But as I said before, you may not need to create your own venues. You may be in a town, you know, if a science festival started taking part in Brighton, most of the Brighton venues will be in Eventotron. So they could say to the science festival, we'd like to be part of your festival, please. And then they can start talking to events that might want to take place at the science festival. In fact, that's happened in Sydney Fringe we work with. And then there was a big Pride event. So the Pride event used Eventotron and the venues were all in there already, so they could sign up and be part of it. Venue settings that are worth being aware of. You can set whether that venue is taking applications for shows or not. And you can say whether or not artists can edit their registration once they're part of that venue. So we tend to have, with some festivals, if you've got large venues, they may want to take over the process of registering a show on behalf of the artist once they've joined that venue. And some venues will let the artist program themselves in. Others will say, no, you can fill out the forms, but we're going to do the dates, times and prices for you. And you can set whether you're going to do streaming from that venue. Our box office thing handles all the streaming stuff for you. So if you do stream shows or if you have on-demand shows that's part of your festival, that can all be handled in Eventotron. And this is just where a venue builds up that profile that we showed before. So there's a lot of information you can put in there about accessibility, the technical facilities you offer. You can put photos and PDFs of your tech specs and that kind of thing, and stage plans. Excuse me. We'll call it a really nice venue. We'll come back to that later when we see the registration taking place. The accessibility options. Okay. So the money tab, first thing to know, we can take payments on your behalf for lots of stages in registration. So you might take an application fee at the very first step, or you might have a range of registration fees that you charge depending on the size of the venue or whether the artist is part of a charity. So you create payment templates, which you can then go and apply to a show. The way we do this is through Stripe. So anyone can create a Stripe account. It's very straightforward. Just click on that blue button that you can see there. If you have a Stripe account, it will join you up to Eventotron. If you don't, you can set one up. It takes about 5 minutes. Any money we take goes straight to you. It goes straight to your Stripe account. We don't sit on it and then hand it out later. It all comes straight to you. So we're going to set up a standard registration fee. And we're going to set up a brochure fee, as I mentioned before. I think we just said the registration fee is £10. I'm going to make the brochure fee £5. If you're not in the UK, it will just use your local currency. That's all taken care of for you. So if I wanted to go and apply those fees to a show, I could do that manually. I go back to my events tab, I find the test event I created, go to the payments tab, and I just say, yeah, I want this show to pay the registration or brochure fee. But we're going to be cleverer than that, and we're going to make them apply automatically to a show. So we do that back in the money tab, automatic fees, and we set up some simple rules about when those payments get applied. So the registration fee gets applied to all events registration. That's really straightforward. And then we're going to apply the brochure fee to events and registration if they've answered yes to, would you like to appear in our print brochure? And that's it. Just showing there's lots of different criteria you can have. Like you might charge someone less if they've already registered shows with you, or you might charge them depending on their capacity, either the venue or the overall run. So that's the basics of getting set up for a festival. We've built our we've put our options in. We've added our set of questionnaires. You probably have much more complicated questionnaires than I've shown you, but hopefully you can appreciate you can build those. The final step before going live. Yeah, just summarizing that. That's our form set up. We've made a test venue. We've set up our payment templates and the automatic rules that apply them. We're in trial mode, so if you click on that, this is the point where we're getting ready to open up, so we'll try and get some money out of you at this point. Loads of different ways to pay. There's one-off festival, if you just run one festival per year, or if your organization happens to run multiple festivals, you can do a subscription plan and either pay monthly or annually. The annual cost being less than 2 festivals, so if you do more than one, then that's the best option. I just turned off trial mode with some Eventotron magic. So the final step is I just click go public. It's just ask me to confirm that I've tested everything and I'm happy and I know that I can support my artists. So go public and you're live. So that festival is now in the Festival Finder, Webinar Fest. So I'll just show, I think this is a little 4-minute thing. Now we're all set up. This is how an artist would go through the process. And hopefully this brings together all the stuff we've seen. So the artist signs in. They look at the festivals that are available. They find you. So this artist that we logged in as already has lots of shows in Eventotron, so they might be applying with a show they've already performed, so they can just choose it there. But actually, I'm going to say I'm making a new show. You can see some of the text we entered before just there. So this is the very basic that we set to be the application form. So we'll just fill out simple information here. 60 minutes and suggested ticket price. Once we've got the information you want, you can submit that. So at this point, if you're curated, the artist would stop there and wait until you contacted them. But because we said that we're automatically approving shows, because this example's an open access festival, we're going to let them straight through to step 2 registration. This is all the stuff that we imported and set up. You see, as questions are answered, the progress is creeping up, so the artist knows what they're getting to. They've answered all the red required questions, so they move on to the next section. You see the progress there. If you look on the left-hand side, we can see the £10 registration fee has already been applied there. We're going to ask them some additional tags. So we're going to say this is a drag flamenco show. The images. Before. Would you like to appear in our print brochure? We're going to say yes. And the artist can see that that extra £5 has been added onto their registration. Straight out that. And then the final stage in this, we're just going to pick a bit of the image that we prefer. The final stage now is just the artist needs to find a venue as we've set it up. As I say, you might not run that way. You might match shows up with venues yourself. But in this case, the artist is going to go to the next stage, the venue finder. That's that test venue that we built before. Obviously, we didn't build a full profile, so we don't want to see much information here. And because this show automatically approves applications, they can sign up like that, and then they can just add their performance dates, times, and prices in there. So it's going to perform on those days. It's already filled in our suggested ticket price and concession price. You could add the child concession there if the artist wants to, or put in accessibility options, that kind of thing. So we save that. So those boxes all represent individual performances. You'll see now on the left, we've got to 100% because we've got a venue and dates, times, and prices. So we can click to finalize. We'll see those terms and conditions that we entered right at the start. A summary of the information that we've said is going to be public facing there. And we're being asked to pay £15. That's just obscuring my credit card details. But that's a real payment there. So that £15 will go straight to you. And then that artist is done. They've finalised their show. So you as the festival manager, you'll be emailed at different points along the path. You've been emailed when they applied and when they finished finalised the registration. I'm just showing you they can go in and see their payment lines, and there's an automatically generated receipt in this case. If they'd come to look at that earlier, it would have been an invoice. And yeah, so that's a finalised show. One other very quick thing to show you, as well as getting shows to apply to you, you can go out and find shows. So obviously, one of the great things about Eventotron is we've got all these shows in the system, so we want you to be able to find them and invite them to be part of your festival. This is quite new, and we haven't made this massively known to artists yet. But this is where anyone who's in Eventotron can go search for any of the shows in the system. Artists can choose to have a public-facing profile where they can show their reviews and stuff about the show. So yeah, this you can see the shows performed at Pride Alone at Camden Fringe, and see reviews and videos and photos and things. And then you could invite them to either take part in your festival if you manage a festival, or if you're a venue manager who's part of the festival, you could also approach them that way as well. Artists can also advertise their show down the side there. So that's always worth keeping an eye on if you want to see what's going on. So that's it.